Are you a high-achieving dental entrepreneur frustrated by the gap between where you are and where you want to go? Are you tired of advisors whose advice keeps you merely surviving when you should be thriving? I'm Tim McNeely, and I believe you deserve to build true wealth so you can take even better care of the people you love, the causes you care about, and leave your dent in the universe. Welcome to the Dental Wealth Nation Show, where we hand you the keys to unlock true wealth quicker and with less effort than you ever thought. Have you ever wondered how change happens? Sometimes change comes in these big magical moments for you, and you have a revelation and you're just like, oh my gosh, that was the most amazing thing. And it was this big moment. But sometimes change comes in small things too. It comes in the daily activities that you do time after time after time. And sometimes that change can take a while, but it's in those small moments. And that's why I'm so excited about today's episode, because by the time we finish today, you're going to know why walking the floor, this isn't just some management cliche. It really is the key to you uncovering the operational blind spots that shape your patient outcomes, your team morale, and your profitability. You're going to see how the small things, that's right, the small things in the practice, those everyday interactions and overlooked workflows, they actually matter a whole lot more than you think. You're going to have a new mindset when it comes to thinking about change, one that really is rooted in operational empathy. Did I say operational empathy? That's right, operational empathy. And whether you're looking at new technology or shifting labs or realigning your systems, you're going to learn how to implement changes that actually stick. But most importantly of all, you are going to feel hopeful and maybe even a little bit fired up about what's possible when you take the leap into digital dentistry. This is about more than tools. It's really about building systems so you can scale with soul. And I am so excited. We've got Joe Lynch here today. Joe is with Dandy. They are a full digital dental lab, and they really help you reduce your complexity and streamline everything from impressions to the final restorations. And what I love about Joe is he thinks in systems. We're going to talk about him disarming bombs and actually how that relates too. And so whether it's your lab workflows or leadership blind spots, Joe sees dentistry like a puzzle, and he's passionate about helping you solve it piece by piece. Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey, Tim, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, right? Like this is so important because, right, we do think about change sometimes. It's like it has to be these mountaintop moments, or you got to go do a retreat or get lost. But sometimes change happens little by little, doesn't it?
All the time. Yeah, piece by piece, brick by brick. Change happens slowly but surely, and then all of a sudden, all at once.
Yeah. So for those of us who aren't familiar with this, give us a little bit of your background and how you ended up here at Dandy and doing digital dentures and in digital workflows and helping doctors really reduce the complexity in their office.
I had no background in dentistry prior to joining Dandy. I started my career at a completely different field. Started my career as a special operations officer in the Navy, diffused bombs on land and underwater, took 2 teams on deployment across Asia before jumping into a totally separate field. I ran a nonprofit for a year, then became a consultant, worked at another startup focused on radiology and analytics before finding Dandy in New York. And that was my introduction to dentistry. I've been at Dandy for 4 years now, starting on the business side, then running our customer support team. Ultimately, today I run our post-sales and customer success team, helping customers, 1, transition to digital dentistry, and then 2, adopt more complex workflows as they work with Dandy over time.
Wow. Well, hey, thank you for your service. My dad was in the Army and a vet also, and certainly appreciate what you've done for us to, right, like literally allowing us to be here today having this conversation. So thank you for your service. And right, like I've had some stressful days in the office. I'm sure you as a listener have had some stressful days in your dental practice, talking about a patient blowing up or the situation blowing up. Like you literally dealt with situations that could blow up.
Yes. Quite literally, and on land, underwater. I guess it's all a matter of perspective at this point, but stressful situations are stressful regardless, and certainly grateful for the experience that I've lived to handle that now as I speak to customers and who have patients in the chair and can ultimately help reframe and build a great experience for them.
Yeah, so let's dive into a little bit about, right, that what we talk about kind of walking the floor. Right, what does that phrase even mean? What does it mean to walk the floor, and why does this matter?
Yeah, I think today we're all awash in data. You have an analytics platform, you have data in your practice management system, you have metrics out everywhere. You can't go anywhere without talking about the rise of data. And there's really data is great, it's fantastic, but there's really just a level deeper here, which is walking the floor and building qualitative insight, right? Really understanding and talking to patients, talking to your staff, talking to the other doctors in your practice, or your peers, your colleagues, to understand, well, what's actually happening here, and getting to ground truth, understanding fundamentally what happens in the room when the assistant is presenting a case to a patient, to drive up case acceptance rate, right? What are the actual fundamental building blocks of that? And how do those ladder up into ultimately what you're trying to achieve, which is financial freedom, additional cases driven per day, whatever the North Star metric is for your practice today? Really making sure that you understand how the building blocks tie, but you also understand it from a ground truth level or a first principles level.
Okay. Right. So how do you even kind of get started on this path? Because, right, I think we are talking to our colleagues, you're talking to your staff, but what does it mean to really have those conversations that actually can drive things forward, right? What are the questions we should be thinking through or asking, right? How can we have better conversations in our office?
Yes, is a great question. And the way that we do it here at Dandy and the way that we've done it in my previous careers is it starts with defining a problem, right? And for Dandy, we had at Dandy when I took over the customer support team, we had a good team. The Our doctors were happy with how quickly we were responding to calls, and how we were listening to them and really taking good notes and passing that to our supply chain team to actually manufacture the products. But as we dug into the problem and started talking to customers, we realized there was something that was not quite right. The metrics looked great, but the experience wasn't perfect. And walking the floor means, well, let me talk to a couple customers. Let
Hmm.
me understand what's happening. And then let me take that experience and translate that to our customer support agents, our lab technicians, and understand, well, where's the disconnect? And really go just a couple
Hmm.
layers deeper to
Hmm.
say, well, what is the detail that we're missing? Because the metric looks okay. The story isn't quite there. And what would it take for us to improve that? Right. And so we start with a hypothesis: our customer support team is not delivering the ultimate experience that doctors want. Why? Well, let's look at the metrics. They were great. They looked fine. But when we talked to doctors, we realized we weren't quite measuring the right thing. And so we started measuring ourselves against, well, how many designs did our agents
Hmm.
work on directly with customers or with dentists? And we realized, oh, actually, that's the metric you need to start managing to. And then we went a touch deeper and we said, well, what does the design experience need to feel like? And from there, you start to change the actual processes. And so walking the floor means, well, how do we answer the phone, or how do we answer
Hmm.
a live chat message when we're speaking with a customer? And what does that have to feel like? What do doctors like about it? What do assistants and office managers like about our support team? And really going deep on, well, slight changes to how we present the talk track, or how we manipulate the design on the screen for a dentist. Those really matter because they want to, a dentist may want to see the whole thing to start and then zoom in. And some dentists may want to start on the line angle of an anterior tooth and then rotate it slightly. Those are nuances, but it really helps frame the conversation. And if you as we're listening to this, dentists, as you think about case acceptance, right? How do we ask the customer or the patient and say, how do you think about your smile? And you really start to get a sense of, well, the patient wants to do this with their smile, and therefore the case presentation and how I present that case needs to change slightly, and you're just collecting more information along the way.
Wow. So, right, I mean, even in your own practice, right, as our listeners are listening, right, this can be as simple as just having conversations with your staff and asking, like, hey, how is this working out? Or what do you think about when we do this? And just listening and gathering that data to make sure you are measuring the right thing. That's really what I hear is, right, are you measuring the right things? And the way you figure out what to measure is by literally just asking the people around you.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And they'll the staff knows. They know, and your patients also know. Hey, I didn't feel comfortable. I was at a practice in Pittsburgh a few weeks ago, and they changed their metric not from case acceptance, but to literally smiles per visit.
Hmm.
And the lead dentist there,
Wow.
he's listening for laughter in the
Huh.
practice because they realize that actually the number one driver of case acceptance is the patient happy? Do they feel good in the office? And so those are subtle changes. What you can measure case acceptance, and that can be an output metric. But what's the right input metric? And sometimes that is really just comfort of the patient.
Oh my gosh. I love that, Joe. That's so exciting. We've got listeners tuning in. If you've got questions for Joe about walking the floor or in your office, put them down in the chat. We're happy to answer those live for you. And Joe, as I listen to this, right, I think this is so powerful, but I wonder, is there something that stops doctors from asking? Is there something that gets in the way so we aren't really talking to our team? And what do you see as those holdbacks sometimes? Did you run into any issues as you were talking to people at Dandy trying to implement this? Like what were the issues and things that you were into?
Yeah, I'd say that honestly, and I'll be a little vulnerable here. The biggest blocker was myself.
Hmm.
I had a team where the metrics looked good, and frankly, we were comfortable.
Hmm.
And so, from and we all have to-do lists, and my to-do list was long and getting longer. And so there was actually just sometimes inertia is the thing to overcome. And when the metric looks good, well, there's not really an impetus to change. And so sometimes, right, it's a matter of unblocking yourself and realizing, well, for me to scale the system, I need to think more critically about, well, what's the experience I'm trying to deliver?
Hmm.
What's my objective, not today or in 3 months, but what would I need to believe in 6 months or 12 months for me to unlock the life that I want to live or the business that I want to go build? And that forces you to, I think, to think critically about, well, where do I have to design the system that scales and ultimately drive a step function change in a metric or in an output metric, and then let me go work backwards to define the
Hmm.
right inputs there.
Yeah. Wow. No, I love that. And right, as we're thinking about, those small changes that you implement in your office that lead to big impact over time, one of the things that I believe Dandy does more uniquely than anyone out there is it's not just digital dentistry. It's not just a digital denture lab, right? In digital lab, it's the fact that it's actually it's a workflow, it's a process, it's a system that you can literally just implement in your office. And you've built a lot of these. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give one. I was at a practice in Chicago yesterday, and you know, the challenge of working with many labs is the workflows are different, and it's 2025. I think we're all familiar with how hard it is to find and retain and find, attract, and retain staff. Well, every time that you need to onboard a new staff member and you're talking about, well, for this lab, I need to do this workflow. And for that lab, I need to do this workflow. And for that third and fourth and fifth lab, I need to do these workflows. And I need to remember to text the photos of this case to that lab and this number. Like those issues and that complexity, it really multiplies. And so the way that we think about this was, how do I design the simplest system from starting a case and taking an impression to placing an order, and really making it simple for every person in the practice, uh, starting with uh, starting with the doctor, of course, but also thinking through the assistants and the office managers and your front desk person who is going to work on billing, right? How do I think about every part from
Mm,
uh, the
wow.
output being a great patient delivery to every step along the way, and making
Hmm.
small changes to just incrementally save time for customers.
Wow. Well, that feels like the operational empathy piece because, right, I define empathy as just really understanding what the other person, right, the person sitting across the table for me is going through. And so that's kind of what I hear here is that you're like, what is that operational empathy, and how do you think about every person involved in the workflow, and what is their experience like?
Yeah, and on our side, we have staffed our entire team with folks who have worked in dental offices or in dental labs, and our entire support team is former clinicians, former assistants, former lab techs. who can fully empathize. Hey, I have a patient in the chair. When an assistant or a doctor says that, that's real. Um, that is a stressful situation for a clinician. And when something's not working or you need to provide additional context or notes, you want to make sure it comes through clearly, because we want the best outcomes for our patients.
Yeah, wow. Incredible. And so, right, here on the Dental Wealth Nation show, we talk a lot about, practice growth, right? Because I believe dentistry is the best career on the face of this planet, right? It offers you freedom, it offers you flexibility if you do it right. There's some shocking stats, and for some doctors it doesn't work out well, but I believe intentionality can really lead to an amazing life in dentistry. And so, what are some of the challenges that you really see doctors have when they're making this transition to digital? Right? Should they be implementing it? Right? What are the benefits, and what are the hesitations that you run into?
Yeah, this is a great question. We see a lot of hesitation just around early adoption, right? And if you're not digital today, there is a change curve, right? And we're all familiar with change, right? Sometimes change is good, sometimes it's bad, but it's always change, and it's never as easy as we think it's going to be. And when we see new customers sign up with us, sometimes there's just hesitation around sending that first case,
Hmm.
taking that first step. And so the way that we've designed our systems is, well, one, we'll train you one-on-one. Small group setting. We'll have a trainer from Dandy spend 90 minutes with your team, one to many in your practice, and train them. This is how you hold the scanner. This is the ordering workflow. Here's how you contact support if you have questions. By the way, if you have questions, it takes us on average 17 seconds to respond. And so those are the ways that I think you help overcome the change curve. But really, like the biggest barrier is sometimes just getting started. And so it really becomes, how do you ease that change and lower the hurdle rate for
Hmm.
doctors and clinicians to get started. And once we get started, then we see it's okay. Let's start with a couple posterior crown orders or flipper orders, and start there, and then work our way towards more complex cases as you build familiarity and comfort with the scanner.
Wow, incredible. So you've been listening to the Dental Wealth Nation show, and we are talking about how to build efficiencies in your practice. We're talking about operational empathy, and we're really talking about, right, how do you build a culture in your practice that can take you even farther? And when we come back, we're going to continue to get into this and look at some of the changes that you can make to make your practice even better.
You're listening to the Dental Wealth Nation show, where we give you the keys to building true wealth. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with the friends you care about. Ready to level up? Grab a copy of my #1 best-selling book, Dental Wealth Nation, and unlock the secrets of building true wealth today.
Welcome back. So, Joe, we've been talking about operational efficiencies. We've been talking about operational empathy. We've been talking about walking the floor in your practice, and how that can actually help you measure the right metrics in your practice, right? Just absolutely outstanding. If you missed that first half, go back and listen to it. Absolutely amazing. And, I want to talk a little bit more about just kind of systems and performance, especially when it comes to the DSO or multi-location practice. We do a lot of work with doctors who are really looking to build up their wealth and have a high value exit. So why should they consider or looking at this? What are the benefits to a DSO or a multi-location group with making this move to digital?
Yeah. When I was in the Navy, we had a saying, and it's common. It's I think it's now a well-known business saying, but you don't rise to the level of the occasion. You actually just you fall back to the level of your systems and your training.
Wow.
And that was as true in the Navy as it is in business today. And systems become the shared reference point for the whole team. This is how we do case acceptance. This is how we present cases to patients. This is how we clean the floor. This is how we wrap up at the end of the day, right? Systems are can be applied in many different ways, and sometimes it's as simple as a checklist. Sometimes it's your CRM or your patient management system, but ultimately, it's always about trying to find the leverage point in how you think about the day to day. And if you're a DSO leader, how you think about the day to day, not just at one practice, but at two practices and three and up to 2,000 practices. That those systems allow you to scale. and
Hmm.
create leverage in the system so that, you don't have to go train each person who joins, right? There's a shared culture, there's a shared mental model and a framework for operating that allows people to, you can teach them the system, and then they have, a set of resources that they can go access, because it is, again, it's shared. And that knowledge creates culture, and systems create culture that allow people to join and stay, and they understand, how do I fit into the overall vision and growth of this company.
Yeah. Well, and with this, right, and with Dandy, right, once again, it's like you've got that system built, right? It's been fine tuned by working with, many practices out there, and so this is something you can just kind of put in your practice and start running with them, which I think is great. But I wonder, right, when you change one thing, that can send out ripples into the rest of the practice. And so, what are some things that you see? Does that help raise the whole team up? Does it add frustrations? Like talk me through like what are some of the ripples that implementing this can actually cause in the rest of the practice?
Great question. The reality is, like all change, you want change to be always positive, but there will be sometimes negative ripples as a result of change. And we all have ways of working. And when you implement a new tool, a new lab, a new patient scheduling system, right, it takes time for people to adapt. And so the way that we think about change is, one, bring people in for the change, talk to them. Here's why we're making the change. And frankly, like, that's the number one reason why people hesitate to change, is they don't understand the why. And so, there's a very famous book, Start with Why, Simon Sinek, right? If you start with why, people can often deal with the how, because they understand how they tie in and what they're working towards, ultimately in achieving, a business outcome or a team outcome, a shared goal. And that's where you start. From there, it's about building the right culture and accountability along the way. So, at Dandy, we have a training team, we have a support team, we have an account management team. We also have a great software product that allows you to get real time knowledge and information. It guides you through the workflow along the way. But ultimately, you want to minimize the amount of time that customers or staff has to ask questions. And if customers or your staff keeps asking the same questions, it means that it hasn't been documented well enough, or it hasn't been taught and nurtured well enough, for it to be like self-serviceable. And those things really uh, increase anxiety around change. And so it really is a self-reinforcing mechanism of, well, if I continue to see anxiety around a specific point, that's a great cue to walk the floor and understand, why is this still an anxiety inducing point? Let me go back and understand, well, how did I communicate this? How did I communicate the why? And if that's clear, then let me go communicate the how,
Yeah.
and work towards solving that, right? That's really operational empathy.
Wow. Well, and the other thing that I hear and I think about is, right, sometimes if you improve one area of the practice, it actually spreads out ripples and other things get better too. And, my wife and I, she's a way better dancer than I will
Yeah.
ever be. And if I try dancing on my own, it's pretty embarrassing and bad. But all of a sudden I start dancing with her and my dancing gets better because she's good, right? And the more she improves, the better I get too. And so I think that that's an interesting kind of side effect is, right, as you work with talented people, as you implement these systems in your practice, everything's just going to improve if you're with people, because you learn and you say, oh, hey, here's how Danny does this. And it just, there's a natural flow into other areas of the practice too.
Tim, I don't believe you. I think you're a phenomenal dancer, and I'll give you credit there. But
Thank you.
you're absolutely right. Right. The great systems raise the floor of performance,
Hmm.
and those things, those lessons learned, those shared experiences often help you realize, oh, I have raised or eliminated what I believe to be the most vexing problem in my office. And it creates sometimes the conditions for your staff to realize, I can solve that on my own. Here's a way for me to solve this problem in what seems to be an unrelated area. But they now have a system, and they can see how you tackled that problem in the first place, or an adjacent problem, and apply those lessons elsewhere. What it also allows you to do is, because you've solved a problem elsewhere, it allows you to float to where the next bottleneck in your operation is, or where your practice is, and create, again, you're always working backwards from the outcome or the life that you want to drive, or the business that you want to run. And you're going to continually need to unblock and create new systems around different issues. And as you get larger, and if your DSO is hitting 10 or 20 or 30 practices, the systems that you designed to start will likely need to evolve as you get larger and larger.
Yeah. Well, right. And Dandy, in your role, is really all about reducing complexity in the office. And right, certainly the digital workflow can introduce some complexity, but what are some other areas that you see introduce complexity into the practice?
Yeah. Um, this is related to the lab, but when when a when a patient leaves after having an impression, and they know they're going to get a restorative item, that patient needs to be rescheduled, right? They need to get scheduled for their follow-up appointment. Well, one of the things that we think about in the practice is, well, how far away do I schedule that appointment? And when you're working with Dandy, we'll tell you the case will arrive back on this date. And that allows you to reduce the amount of time that the front office spends rescheduling, because we can tell you what date the case is going to arrive. You'll get a text notification when it ships, and that allows you to confirm the appointment with your patient, and then they show up and the case fits, right? And that's actually like those are small details that don't immediately seem connected to a lab experience, but that create real friction and overhead for a front office assistant,
Hmm.
or your scheduler to, and it's just extra operational time.
Wow. So I want you to talk directly to a listener right now. If you could tell a doctor, right, one thing that they should go back tomorrow and do in their practice to start building a better practice, what would you tell them to go do?
I would start with walk the floor.
Hmm.
Pick an example, pick a thing that you believe needs to improve in your office, and just go through each step in the process of how you think it runs today and confirm your understanding.
Hmm.
You don't even need to make a change, but just validate, is the way that it happens today the way that I would do it myself? And if the answer is no, it's a great way for you
Hmm.
to jump in, ask questions, ask your staff, hey, why do we do it this way? And if that doesn't resonate with you, you have your first project.
Wow, amazing! Right, you make it sound so simple, Joe. I absolutely love that, and but oftentimes they may be simple, but they're hard to do sometimes because we get in our own way, and I appreciate you sharing that earlier. Is sometimes the biggest roadblock is right up here in my head, and that's
Yeah.
what gets in the way of building these better things. And so, how can we get in touch with you, right? If we want to talk more about, right, how do we build operational efficiencies, especially around the digital workflow? How can we find you?
Yeah, we are Dandy, the fully digital dental lab with real-time lab technician support. And we're at meetdandy.com. Feel free to contact us anytime. And I look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, excellent. And then I do want to wrap up just a little bit on. I'll ask you to pull out your crystal ball. We'll talk a little about digital and AI, and maybe you got some opinions on this stuff. It seems to be pretty hot right now. So like, where do you see this going? How do you see AI factoring into it? And right, should we be concerned? Does this help? Does it hurt? Like, just kind of walk us through what you see on the horizon.
I think AI is going to bring extremely positive changes to the dental lab industry. I can say here at Dandy, we are working on integrating AI into scanning, into um, the user experience, so that we can tell doctors at the time when the patient's still in the chair, is this impression good, right?
Wow.
Is it workable? And what
Hmm.
that, again, we're always trying to simplify the workflow for practices, and no one likes bringing a patient back, period. And so, really, we're trying to give the most information as possible to a dentist upfront, so that they can make the best clinical decision, and we can work together and really simplify communication overall, right? Reduce complexity everywhere, walk the floor to understand what are the nuance areas of exchange that we can improve for a dentist. And I think AI will be a major groundswell for dentistry
Hmm.
overall, but certainly in the lab experience.
No, excellent. Well, hey, I love that. And thank you for sharing so generously. One of the reasons I love doing this show is I learn things too when I'm listening, right? And it's like, right, I just think about, right, interacting with my clients, with my customers, asking them, hey, what's working? What do I do well? What can I get better at, right? It's vulnerable. It's a little scary to ask those questions because they just might tell you. But if they do, right, the things that you can learn, it will just absolutely improve you so much. So thank you for helping shift our mindset around change. And I know I certainly feel once again more hopeful about dentistry, certainly fired up about what's possible. So any closing thoughts before we sign off here, Joe?
Yeah, Tim, it's great to be here. Thank you for the time. Thanks for having me. I would leave the audience with walk the floor. Those little changes that you make, they compound and they create leverage for you and your business.
Wow. Hey, well, thank you again for being a great guest, and we'll see you again here soon on the Dental Wealth Nation show.
That's a wrap on today's Dental Wealth Nation show. If you've loved today's insight, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and share the wealth with your dental friends. I'm Tim McNeely, and remember, your amazing life of significance is just one smart decision away. Keep thriving, and catch you next time on the Dental Wealth Nation show.